The elements of the communication mix are advertising, sales promotion, public relations, personal selling, and finally, direct marketing. Before we discuss these elements in more detail, though, we must distinguish between two primary classifications that are used for marketing communications. The ways that marketers reach customers are usually classified as impersonal and personal communication. Impersonal communication occurs when the marketer doesn't really have direct contact with the potential consumer. So this would include things like advertising, persuasive communication that uses paid media placement to promote a product or service. The second way to reach customers is directly. Although direct promotion is sometimes referred to as personal advertising, personal selling is a much more accurate term for me, personal selling rather than personal advertising, since this direct and personal communication involves face-to-face contact with customers. Now let's talk about establishing the elements of the communication mix. How do you create this communication mix? What elements will you use more than others? In order to do this, we have to understand what these different elements are. First, let's talk about advertising. What is advertising? It's a paid form of non-personal, remember we said that, it's not personal, non-personal presentation of goods or services. So you see a lot of it on different types of media, magazines, newspapers, television, radio, online, in your email. Check your email right now. I'm sure you have some ads in your email inbox. Next is personal selling. This involves, as we stated earlier, personal face-to-face contact between the sales force and the customer. This would occur, let's say, with a tailor meeting with a customer to craft a suit, to make a suit for him. Next is sales promotions. These are usually short-term incentives to encourage trial from new customers and also maintain purchases by regular customers, like those dollar-off coupons that you receive in the mail. Think about those. I got some just yesterday. They really incentivize you. And you have to think hard. No, I don't need extra shoes, so this 50% off or 30% off coupon really is something I should not use. Public relations is next, and that's when a company tries to obtain favorable publicity and also undertake efforts to build a good corporate image. Now, more and more companies are using the internet, though, to engage in this final piece, direct marketing. They engage in targeted communications with specific customers after collecting data on these individuals. That way, they know exactly what products these customers are seeking, what their psychographic profile looks like, and so on. So this direct marketing has become increasingly easier in the internet age to engage in than in years gone by. Now, what are the pros and cons of these different elements we spoke about? Advertising, personal selling, sales promotion, public relations, and direct marketing. What are the pros and cons? First, advertising reaches a lot of buyers, but it is impersonal. Remember, it's not that personal, and it can be very costly. Personal selling could be very persuasive, but it is the most expensive promotional tool to use. Sales promotions, they provide quick response, right? But it's short-term, it's short-lived. It's not appropriate to use this as a long-term strategy to incentivize purchase, right? Because you'll have to provide continuous discounts on your product for the life of the product if you want to use this as a long-term strategy. And this would bring with it implications for quality perceptions, etc. Now, advertising is paid media, right? But public relations is earned media. A study in 2014 by Nielsen was commissioned by an organization, Empowered, on the role of content in the consumer decision-making process. This study concluded that public relations is almost 90% more effective than advertising in terms of the resulting positive evaluations. With advertising, you tell people how great you are. With public relations, you get others to sing your praises. Other people say, well, you're great. So it's much more believable. Finally, direct marketing, pros and cons. Direct marketing is a targeted effort to reach consumers with messages designed specifically for them. In the past, this was done via direct mail, then direct email, but now this is done by simply using your data that's collected via web browsing combined with geo-tracking from using your smartphones. Remember that discussion we had when we talked about segmentation, where I showed you how segments are created. So that same data is used to individually target consumers with specific ads created specifically for them. So think of geo-tracking. If you combine geo-tracking, knowing where you are located because of data in your smartphone, with your web history, you might receive an ad based on where you are in a city for stores in the immediate vicinity that sell a product or service that you have shown interest in. In addition, I'm sure you've received targeted advertising after purchasing a product online or visiting a site. So there are really pros and cons to this using online activity to, as marketers would frame it, help customers in terms of designing products and services specifically for them. There are pros and cons to this, and we'll discuss that in more detail later on in this lecture. Now, how can these different elements of the communication mix, how can they be used to move customers through the stages of the decision-making process? Remember, you said that's what marketing communications must do. Move you from the awareness stage, right, or straight through evaluation, and finally all the way down to the fifth stage, purchase and loyalty, repeat purchase. Okay, we want that repeat purchase. Let's see how you can use these elements. Now, one of the variables that impacts how the elements of the communication mix are used is the stage of the decision-making process that in which a consumer finds himself or herself. Once the decision-making process of the target segment has been determined, then it's necessary to choose appropriate communication tools, be it advertising or sales promotion. Different types of communication are used for obvious reasons. Some are better than others, depending on the objective. For example, due to its very high reach, television advertising is great for creating broad-based brand awareness and providing information about specific products or services. So this is best in the problem recognition and information search stage. However, television advertising is typically not as effective in generating action by the consumer. So when you want to move consumers from the evaluation to the purchase decision stage, sales promotion or personal selling might be more effective. Let's look at an example. Mars, that's a candy manufacturer in the United States, they use product promoting ads on traditional television to introduce previously unaware consumers to a new peanut butter flavor of their Snickers brand. And that is a really good flavor, by the way. Go out and try it if you haven't done so yet. And they did this to persuade them to consider trying this new product. Then they used promotions in the store to get consumers to make that impulse purchase. So there'd be shelf talkers or the product, the peanut butter flavor would be placed right near the register in packets, etc., to encourage you to purchase. So, in summary, if you lay out the buying process of a target consumer segment, by doing this, managers can then analyze each stage in isolation and explore what makes consumers move from one stage to the other, move from problem recognition to the next stage, information search and evaluation, etc. With this understanding, marketers can develop marketing communication campaigns that are better tailored to each distinct stage. One point to note, though, these different communication elements are not used in isolation. They tend to be combined with other communication elements at different stages in the decision-making process. So, one might be used to a greater extent than others, depending on the decision-making stage of the consumer. Let's examine the return provided by these different elements based on the investment at various stages of the decision-making process. Communication tools vary in cost effectiveness at different stages of the decision-making process. And advertising and publicity play a very important role in the problem recognition stage and information search stage. Evaluation, though, is primarily affected by personal selling, and closing the sale tends to be influenced mostly by both personal selling and sales promotion. Moving the customer across the finish line is impacted both by personal selling and sales promotion. Another variable that must be considered when setting the communications mix is the type of market. Communication mix allocation varies between consumer and business markets. Consumer markets tend to spend comparatively more on sales promotion and advertising, but marketers in a B2B setting, tend to spend more on personal selling. You know, in general, you'd use more personal selling with complex or expensive goods, products that would exist in a B2B setting, like large pieces of machinery, etc. And especially in a situation where there are far fewer sellers who are much larger as well. So personal selling works better in a B2B setting. Communication tools also vary in effectiveness at different stages of the product life cycle. In the introduction stage, advertising, events, and experiences and publicity have, more effectiveness, followed by personal selling to gain distribution coverage, and then sales promotion and direct marketing to induce trial. Now, in the growth stage, there's a second stage. Demand has its own momentum through word of mouth. But in the maturity stage, advertising, events, and experiences and personal selling grow even more important. Finally, when the product is on the way out, in the decline stage, sales promotion continues to be much more effective when other communication tools tend to be reduced. And salespeople give the product only minimal attention at that time. It's on the way out, right? Think of the type of sales support you received when you went to buy a CD player when MP3s were becoming the rage. Not much. And there were strong sales promotions for these types of products or services.